Okay, so welcome everyone. I will call the meeting to order as the staff representative for reasons I will explain in a moment at 5:31 p.m. today. And we'll go ahead and get kicked off. So let me just pull up the agenda here for everyone in the room to be able to see. I will also share, but I guess I probably don't need to share the screen on Zoom. We have the agenda up that we're looking at right now. So we'll start with a roll call. So I will go through the list of attendees who's currently published on the agenda, and then we'll make a modification because we had some members added after the agenda was published last week. So some members in the room may not see their names on the agenda yet, but they'll be there on the next one. Don Barrett.
Here.
Roy Clark.
Here.
Kathy Cohn.
Present.
Dean Gribble submitted his regrets. He's out of town, as is Bernard Rottner. Freeman Walker.
Here.
And then I'll make a modification to the agenda to also add Andrew Forster.
Can we see the spelling of your name?
Oh, Forster.
Oh, Forster. Okay.
Yeah.
And the first name was Adam?
Andrew.
Andrew, okay.
But I've been called pretty much everything, so go nuts.
We won't call you Andy.
Been called a lot worse.
Very good. Okay, so we'll move now to the acceptance of the agenda. So I'd like to add a modification to the agenda, one of which is to update this agenda in the minutes to include our newly appointed commissioners. So that's Andrew Forster, Max Dearda, and Mike Fisher. Those are the three who've been appointed. We are also expecting 2 more commissioners to be appointed next week. So by the September meeting, we'll have 11 people on this list. So that is my comment to the agenda. Do we have any other requests or comments on the agenda?
Nope.
No.
Okay, do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
Yes.
Okay, second.
Second.
Okay, great. Anyone opposed to approving?
No.
I don't normally have to do this part, so I'm sorry. Okay, so I'm actually going to hand it over to our one continuing commissioner, Don Barrett, to handle our welcome and introductions.
Okay, let's see. Am I on audible? Yes, I am. What was I going to do? Okay, the beginning of the agenda is welcome and introductions. I'm actually doing a welcome and I'm going to hold the introductions a little bit. This is a minor modification. And I'm the one that's speaking because I'm the continuing commissioner from before. It's encouraging to see that we have so many people applying for the commission, that we're going to be up to having 11. And we say we will be able to do a lot with that. Particularly, hopefully we can do something to reduce the heat impacts and climate change. Not likely to be anytime in our agenda, but we've got plenty to do. So we're going to have a good chance for commissioners to do plenty of work over the next 3 years. Actually, my whatever you call it, tenure ends the end of this coming year, but I will go ahead and apply again for the next year. Next 3. Okay. I don't think I have to worry about the other comment I had because we don't have any of the non-voting. Okay. So this is a time for public comments. And so do we have any comments from the public?
Yes, Paul Hendrickson here from Upper West Side. Briefly, I just want to follow up and find out now that Commissioner Baker has termed out a lot of the work that he did with no smoking or smoke-free Palm Springs agenda kind of and ordinance, which Bob and I have been working on since, oh gosh, I can't remember when. It's been so long. I'll follow up with you, LP, to find out who might be taking that over and how we can assist in those efforts. The second item I wanted to mention is with the turf rebate, matching turf conversion rebates, and definitely encouraging and grateful that the city has already agreed to, the city council voted in favor of $1 million towards that project, which is excellent. And I do see that you're looking at different possibilities of how to organize or decide how that's going to be rolled out, and definitely encouraging probably the dollar per square foot if it's with no cap, because that could get to a lot more customers, and hopefully that would work. Also, HOAs have been up against the cap. I'm leadership with Upper West Side Neighborhood Organization, which has effectively 9 HOAs in it. Some of them already were originally designed with water efficient landscaping, and others are looking to do so more. And with the $5 cap, some of them were really finding it not possible. So that's what I wanted to share with that, is make it more accommodating for HOAs that have larger projects, but still being able to spread it out through a lot more people. So those were the 2 things I wanted to mention. And a third I'll just note is I like being able to attend virtually. So when you get to that discussion, I encourage keeping the virtual option. And that's enough from me. Thank you very much. And it's nice seeing new faces, familiar new faces too.
Great, thank you so much, Paul. We'll follow back up on the smoke-free Palm Springs aspect. One of the things we'll be talking about over the next couple of meetings is getting the new commissioners comfortable and settled in new subcommittees. So I imagine there will be a subcommittee that will take on that particular issue, but I'll follow back up on the staff side as well. Do we have any other members of the public on our Zoom who would like to make any public comment today? Okay, hearing none, I'll do one final check of the room. Okay, we're good. All right, we can move on.
Okay, all right. Okay, next on the agenda is the election of interim chair and vice chair. Before I say anything more about that, I want to note that Director LP McCoy and former Commission Chair Roy Clark and I have talked about this. There is a need for there to be a chair and a co-chair, or vice chair, I'm sorry. But since we don't know each other yet, it's a little early to be doing that. So what we're hoping that we can come up with, and it's really going to be up to those who are present, that we elect a chair and vice chair for an interim or a small period, so that maybe in October or November that we will then have another election when we know each other better. But we do need a chair. I'm not supposed to be chairing. It's just by happenstance. So we need to do that. And so I think the best thing to do is actually to talk a little bit about ourselves, and then we have this election we need to immediately have. And we do have enough for quorum, right? So I'm not going to start with myself. I'll start with my right side.
Commissioner Barrett, I might add some specifics on the request for introduction. So we'd love to hear kind of what your interests in sustainability are, you know, what brought you to the commission, you know, why you love living or working in Palm Springs, et cetera. So sorry to do that.
That's good. Okay.
My name is Kathy Cohen, and I've been active in community issues for probably the past 10 years or so, a little bit more maybe. I'm a former chair of 1PS and former vice chair of 1PS. I served on a number of the committees in that organization. So I'm going to sort of be pulling back a bit in those obligations. And so I was drawn to this in part because of the prior Patrick, right, was a friend of mine. And so I got to have meaningful conversations about sustainability with him. Unfortunately, but fortunately, we have a good replacement, but I do miss him. I know you do too. So that was part of what I wanted to do. And it was because I've been so active. I knew I didn't want to slow down that much, but I wanted to also learn about this more. I do have my little self-composting thing hanging out in the kitchen, but I know there are a lot of other things that we could be doing, especially as we're suffering through this hot air right now. And know that a lot of it is due to how we live and do business and take care of ourselves. So that's how I came about being but I'm a former educator, so that's also a motivation for me.
Should I go next or should we go and me last? Okay, I'll go next.
You could do this.
There we go. Okay, I'm Don Barrett. I've been on the commission for 2 years, full years. I think so, yes. I came to the commission with not with a specific agenda around sustainability or environmental concerns, but with an agenda of, I'm always concerned about how what we do can be carried over into the populations in Palm Springs that are not who are lacking in resources. I live in a mobile home park, and I know that I should not using that to imply that mobile home park means you lack resources, but we are a different group. We're different people, and we're different people. Okay, many of the things that are proposed are a little bit hard to implement in a mobile home park. For example, we're having trouble implementing the compostable separations, and that's true in some of the other ones. And I'll talk more about that later. So it's to look out to how we can make sure that we develop a sustainability that is working across boundaries and is less about specific issues. I do have an issue I always say, which will never happen, which is to cut down all the palm trees. But I always say it, so I have to say it. I say they don't provide any shade. I ride a bike. They don't provide any shade when you're riding a bike. So that's it. I've been in Palm Springs for 10 years. I have served with Kathy on 1PS for an extended period of time, and with Roy also on 1PS. For fun, I do taxes in the spring. That's my volunteer work. Okay, that's enough.
Hi, this is Prema Walker. I came across environmental studies or anything during my engineering back in 2012, just for one semester. And it was just reading comprehension. And I'm like, I don't understand anything. Then I walk out of the classroom, then I can, oh yeah, I know what's going on. So I came here to US and moved to Palm Springs in 2020 in the middle of COVID. I started volunteering at the farmers market to get to know the city more because I felt like Palm Springs is going to be my home. And I wanted to do more and use whatever I learned as a generational knowledge back from home, because I grew up with my grandparents who are farmers. So the first thing we learned is like nothing is waste. It's just a resource that haven't served its purpose yet. That's the definition I got from my grandparents. So whenever I look at something, instead of saying waste, I'm like, let me think, if this is a resource, how can I use this? How can I give it more life? And that kind of grew up on me, and it's totally taking over for me. So no paper from my house going to recycle or anything. I try to shred it and compost it. And I ended up joining Desert Compost Group, which might be having a little bit of conflict of interest. So I'm gonna be recusing myself. But that's my expertise because we are dealing with SB 1383 right now. And compost is going to be one of the best cause we can do because we are eating food every day. And I would like to advise more on that and implement how we can implement composting at every level. You know, it doesn't have to be one person doing it at the outskirts of the city. How are we composting at the parks? How are we composting at the city office? How everybody can compost at their home level? Or if not, do you have a neighbor that's willing to do that for you? So those are the things I would like to discuss and offer my advice. Or if you guys have any questions, I'm here to help you guys. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Roy Clark. For me, this is the second time around. I was on the commission for 6 years, starting in 2016 through 2022. I was chair for about 3.5 of those years. And I was involved in quite a few of the major projects that the commission accomplished during that time. The first thing that I worked on was the ban on gas-powered leaf blowers, which the council passed in 2017. I was on a committee that developed and rolled out the household battery recycling program. The committee also developed the foodware ordinance that includes encouraging the use of reusable foodware. Also worked on the climate action roadmap and spent some time working on a proposed update to the sustainability plan, which will come before the commission hopefully in the not too distant future. So I've been involved in a lot of things, and I actually expected to retire completely, but the reason that I applied and was unfortunately was accepted is that I wanted to see through some of the things that I've been working on previously, particularly the climate action roadmap and some of the activities that need to take place. So hopefully we'll have a good subcommittee and a good effort working on those things. I've also worked on in 1PS. I've served on committees with Dawn and Kathy. So I have a good understanding of how 1PS works. And also I was on the selection committee that hired LP.
No conflict of interest.
So my name's Andrew Forster. I'm new to Palm Springs, reasonably new to America. I've been in Palm Springs for a year, so I'm just getting used to the area. With regards to this, a lot of my history previously in England, I worked for a research group called the Centre for Agriculture and Water Resilience. That's one of the largest research groups of its type in Europe. As one of their financial administrators. So with that, the group basically looks at sustainability, agriculture, how your water systems are used, recycling, all those kind of things. So it's a big broad range. One of the things that I am trying to do at the moment, I've got a call with them later this week, so I'm going to try and see if they've got any ideas or research that we can steal and start using over here. Because like the scientists are great, like they will hand out all their stuff for free because they just want people to know. And working with them is one of the things that I noticed over here. Like a lot of it is education. Like people are happy to do environmental sustainability and things like that. They just need to know what it is and how to do it. Like I haven't met anyone that is just like, oh, well, I'll just burn the planet down. Like no one is like that, but it gets complicated. Like people get told this, they get told that. And like, so part of it is just helping other people understand what we can do, how we can do it. And just gradually just change things. Like we can't change the world in a day, but we can all put some effort in and do it over time. For my career, most of it's been in finance. So I do all the accounting and fun stuff. So we're done over there. So I can feel your pain around tax season. But yeah, so I've been on the Beaumont Finance and Audit Commission, so I have some experience with your American systems. But I'm very willing to learn. I've got a lot of free time at the moment, so I want to use it to do something useful.
Great.
And our recruit after doing tax work. No. You'd have to know American tax system.
There you're going to have a bit of a problem.
Okay, so we need to do an election. This is such a simple task to figure out who's going to be where on what. I didn't actually thought it out. Do we have any, so I guess we just do it this way. Does anyone want to be chair?
Well, I'll be happy to volunteer.
Okay, so there. Okay, vice chair.
No, did you, no, I was just gonna make a suggestion.
Good.
I think it would be appropriate for someone, the two that have been chairs before, to be the vice chair, to be a good coach. If that is agreeable, but I don't know how we now choose that.
That's an interesting, nice way to put it. Okay.
Or at least the phone number so we can hassle you with all the questions.
Well, I'm willing to be vice chair. I'm not sure. Roy, did you want to be vice chair? He doesn't want to. Okay, and I sort of know the Brown Act. That's one of the fun things to learn.
I've been there, done that.
You've done the Brown Act?
For Beaumont, no. Like, and we went through the course over here when they explained it.
That
Oh, yeah.
stayed in my head so well.
Yeah.
We're violating it right now, probably.
Nope.
Okay, Do we have any other?
Yeah.
Are you interested in chair or vice chair?
No, not yet.
Not yet, okay. So, and Andrew, you said you're aware of what I said about let's do this for like till probably November.
You'll be sick of me by the like next meeting, so it'll be fine.
I didn't understand that at all. So, okay, that will be our worst problem. Okay,
Would you like me to make a motion?
sure.
I move that Andrew Forster would be the interim or
Actually, just say
Chair,
chair, we'll just, it's an understanding.
scratch that, take on the responsibility and the role of being the chair of the commission, and that Don Barrett, having had past experience, would be the vice chair. That was a
We do not.
motion.
You should make a motion, there has to be a second to that motion. It's inappropriate for me to make that second for Andrew.
One of the two of you.
Second.
Okay, Roy seconds that. We actually, because it's chair position, we actually need to have a roll call vote. So LP, would you do a roll call?
I most certainly can. I'll start with Kathy Cohen,
Aye.
Don Barrett,
Aye.
Prima Walker,
Aye.
Roy Clark, Andrew Forster.
Aye.
Okay, 5
Okay.
ayes, no noes.
You're now chairing the rest of the meeting.
Oh, can I change my yay to no?
Still be 4-1.
Yeah,
I can help with that.
yeah, okay.
Because I wrote this. Okay, so the next question was, do our meetings, do we want to go to being in person or virtual or hybrid?
I can
LP,
provide a little bit of background here. So as I think Commissioner Clark was mentioning toward the beginning of the meeting, as people were getting settled, this is our first time being in person since February of 2020 in this commission. We have had the authorization to meet virtually under, I believe it's AB 361, which is a state authorizing piece of legislation that basically says that as long as the council continues to issue findings that we are significantly impacted by COVID-19 and want to maintain the ability to meet virtually, we've been able to do so. Most of the commissions here in the city have gone back to meeting in person with a virtual option. Primarily the virtual option being for members of the public to be able to join us, to provide comment, things like that, kind of like we had this evening, for people to kind of listen in. We have seen it sparingly used for commissioners who might be traveling or on the road. I can't make it, if it becomes something where half of our commissioners are on the Zoom, we might want to consider meeting virtually. But I think most commissions have moved to a format very similar to this one. So we get to decide whether we want to keep going with the hybrid, whether we want to go back to full virtual, whether we want to have no hybrid. That's kind of, those are the choices I think before the commission today.
I think I quite like hybrid versions. One, it allows us all to do it in person, but it provides an option for those that aren't here, and it's not expensive as far as I'm aware. So, I mean, for example, like I can't drive. I've taken a few too many head injuries, so I pass out when I drive. And the bus system in America is not exceptional. So if, for example, I had to be here in person and I had to like take buses and things, that would be prohibitive. But just allowing the hybrid, a pretty manageable cost, I think, should be accessible.
I have no trouble with the hybrid motion. I think that how we're doing it right now, other than that, I don't like the echoes of this room, but it's otherwise, it seems to make sense to me.
Since we all are new, I think it's pretty essential that we get to know each other, and I think that it's much easier if you can see faces and eyes and body language and that sort of thing. So I think but I certainly agree that the virtual concept allows a lot of people to join us if they want to, and it is easier for them, or else it might be even essential for a lot of people. So I support it.
I like the hybrid approach. It gives other people an opportunity to participate if they can't be here, but just to speak for the past, We were virtual for a long time, and there were several commissioners that I never met face to face. So I think it's important with so many new people, like Kathy said, for as many people to be able to come or have the opportunity to come and meet face to face so we can get to know each other.
Yeah, hybrid version is good.
Okay, so it sounds like there's probably, I don't know that we need to take a vote on this. I think we're-
We don't need
it
to
sounds
vote on
like
that, I don't think. We
there is
can just,
consensus.
we can't go back to being entirely virtual. I don't think the code will allow us to do that.
That's, I think, correct, probably.
So, yeah, I think that we can go with hybrid, yeah. And we strongly encourage all commissioners to be here so we can do face to face. Actually, there's not a lot of trouble going through this agenda because most of it's most of it is LP. The one thing I did not say, this is slightly out of order, is that the chair and vice chair together work with LP after the meeting in terms of okaying the minutes and developing the agenda for the next meeting. So not terribly difficult.
Just get for homework.
Okay. Orientate, there's a plans for an orientation for the Sustainability Commission.
Sure, I can discuss that. So, we have a lot of new people, and so we kind of have two goals that we want to achieve with orientation broadly set. So all of the new commissioners are attending the Brown Act and ethics training orientations, which are a good kind of general overview for how these commissions operate and what kind of they do and don't, or they do are or are not allowed to do. We also need to kind of do two things. So one is build a common language with each other. So, many people are coming with lots of different types of sustainability expertise. So it's going to be important for us to kind of all get on the same page about like, what are the main laws that we implement? What are the main tools that we have at our disposal? What are the roles and responsibilities of the commission versus the staff? How do we kind of work together? And then to also get people up to speed on what we've done, both as a commission in the past and as a city. So the guidance we've received is that we can do orientations, but they have to be below a quorum. That's a Brown Act rule. So basically for this commission, once we've got all 11 of our people, which we'll have after Monday of next week, that can basically be like a group of 5 or fewer. If people would prefer to meet one-on-one, that's also okay with me. So probably what we'll do is, it will be us, the staff, and then probably some of our commissioners who've been with us for more than a week. We'll also participate in those as well to help us share some of that information and some of their learning. So really the goal here is just to kind of get everybody up to speed, give you a chance to ask questions about what we've been up to. I also, want to make sure I'm as accessible as possible as people are working their way through. So feel free to give me a call, shoot me an email. As I'll talk about in a minute, we do handle a lot of different stuff. So sometimes it's helpful if you let me know in advance if you're going to come to the office, or shoot me a text that says, hey, can we talk later on, just in case we're collecting batteries somewhere or something. But yeah, so that is something we'll be working on primarily in the month of August, because the commission does not meet in August. So we'll use August instead to focus on orientation. Does anyone have any specific questions, thoughts, or requests on how we do that?
No.
Okay, okay, go ahead.
Well, if it starts in August, then you're gonna be doing that or?
Yes, yeah, and so we can do the orientations on Zoom, it can be super informal. So that won't be an official meeting of the commission, since it has to be below the quorum anyway. So it'll be flexible. But if people need to wait until September, we can do that too.
Okay, sounds good.
That's it.
All right, and then you have comments.
Oh, yes, my turn. Okay. So I'll be fast today. So I'm gonna flip over. I need some slides. So I'll mostly I make slides so I don't talk too much. So that is what we're doing today. Okay, so hi, everyone. Thank you for coming. So I wanted to just briefly introduce our team. And I'm actually going to ask Christian to go first, who is brand new with our team, has been here for 3.5 weeks now. 3.5 weeks. So I'll let Christian introduce himself, sort of explain what he's excited about and the kinds of work he's doing so far.
Hello, my name is Christian Wheeler. So I've been here about 3.5 weeks, and I have a background in sustainability and kind of did some master's work in forestry via Germany. And so, here I'm going to be working on more transportation greenhouse gases, and I'll be taking over the community garden. So looking forward to working with you guys and nice meeting you guys.
And we're very excited that Christian is here. I will also just, for the benefit of the new folks, just introduce myself briefly, just so you have a sense of where I'm coming from. So LP is short for Lindsay Page. My email address is preposterously long, and I'm very sorry about that. I will make sure everyone has all my contact information, all the different ways to reach me. But I have been here for almost exactly a year. So thanks to Roy for taking me to come, because it's been great fun. So before I was here in the city of Palm Springs, I spent about a year and change working with startups in LA, working with a clean tech incubator, working kind of on their research and development, like public demonstration program there. Before that, spent 10 years in the broader New York City Mayor's Office ecosystem, primarily focusing on sustainability, whether that was, strategic initiatives or legislation. So worked on climate action plans there. A lot of things related to waste, some things related to buildings and energy efficiency, kind of dabbled in a bunch of different stuff. Taught myself how to write legislation, which was kind of hard as a mechanical engineer, but then I learned it's pretty much just copy paste. So we can all do it. So we can learn. Before that, I actually worked in the kind of tech and innovation side of the mayor's office. So working on like community center technology projects, access to broadband and internet, internet, like online privacy, things like that. But actually started my career in utilities. So working at a public power utility in New York State, where I focused on R&D for everything from natural gas plants to high voltage power transmission and things like that. So really, have been really thrilled to be here and work really closely with the community here in Palm Springs, which is a very generous community with their knowledge and time. And really, as I think Andrew, you mentioned, very excited to work on environmental action. And, I think of us as kind of a frontline city in a lot of respects, but also a demonstrator city in a lot of respects, because we do have the benefit of having certain kinds of resources, attentions, political support that a lot of cities in our position and in our size may not have. So when I think about the work that we do, I also think about the ability for the work to speak beyond just the borders of the city of Palm Springs, to reach everyone within the city of Palm Springs, both the traditional and non-traditional people who can be incorporated here, and figure out how we can help other little desert cities thrive going forward. So that's kind of my deal. I talk too fast also, so I am working on talking more slowly and more clearly. You will not notice my southern accent come out until holidays, when I talk to my parents often. So that's me.
And where is that?
Nashville. That's where my folks live. So in terms of like the rest of the team, so we have 2 more staff lines, thanks to the hard work of the commission over the past few years. We're focusing next on hiring our program coordinator. This person is kind of like the front door and nerve center of our office. So they'll take on a lot of responsibilities related to, the day-to-day liaising with the public. Some of the public programs that we offer, like we mentioned, like the battery recycling program, we help people dispose medical waste, all different kinds of things. And then also taking on our events that we do. So that person is going to be our next targeted hire, and will be very key. They'll also take on a big role liaising directly with this commission. So you'll still work with me a lot, but you'll have one additional person to help with that as well. And then we'll be hiring a second specialist, so kind of similar to Christian's role, where it's going to be somebody who's taking on a specific subject matter portfolio. That person will be probably 70% focused on waste, because that is a pretty big topic for us. So that's going to be our next hire that we'll do after we get that coordinator on board. And then we'll be all full. We sit back here in the development services wing, which is kind of, if you go through the little atrium, we're over on that side. So if you're ever in the area, you're welcome to kind of see who's around. So, sometimes we're out like fixing EV chargers that weren't bolted to the ground properly and stuff like that. So we bounce around. Just wanted to highlight here a couple of our key priorities for basically this fiscal year, which we refer to as fiscal year 2024, which just began in July. I'll talk a little bit also about the budget for fiscal years 24 and 25 in this context. So when we're kind of deciding how we're going to spend each individual day, we're referencing the climate action roadmap primarily. So we'll make sure that all the commissioners know exactly where that is and know where to find what you're interested in it. We're referencing the climate action roadmap, which was worked on in close collaboration with and led by the commission, which identifies some key areas where we want to reduce greenhouse gas emissions in some key projects. We also have some additional things that we're doing to kind of build foundation for the next version of the roadmap, so kind of longer term projects. And then we also have some things that we do that are kind of more around improving the health of the natural ecosystems, or our general resource-based systems here in Palm Springs. So for example, when you see turf conversion / grass removal, sometimes your first question might be like, LP, why are we working on this? There's not necessarily greenhouse gas emissions reduction associated with this. That's because this ties into our sort of broader environmental ethos on reducing our footprint here in the desert, making sure we're helping residents of the city live more environmentally conscious and environmentally forward lifestyles. So that's a key priority. That's really focused here in the beginning of this fiscal year. We'll talk a lot about that later on, so I won't bore anybody with that. The next major project that we were granted a lot of funding by the council this year for is city fleet electrification. So one of the strategies that really resonates with me when I'm planning this kind of work is, what are some things that are within our control where we can slash those emissions as much as possible? One of those examples is our city fleet. We have a couple hundred vehicles ranging from sedans, small SUVs that our building inspectors use, all the way up to de-icing trucks at the airport. There are a few different state laws from CARB, for example, the California Air Resources Board, that require medium and heavy duty fleet vehicles to only be replaced with electric vehicles by 2035. And that phases in over time. So we basically have to buy a lot of chargers for the city fleet. So we were awarded almost $1 million over last year and this year to focus on this project, which will help us add charging and start replacing some of the city fleet vehicles. So continuing to lead by example. The next thing here on the list is improving building efficiency and performance. So if you poll sustainability directors around the country right now and ask them what the #1 thing was that they were working on, they would say building energy efficiency. This is the thing that the most money is coming from the federal government through the IRA and the IIJA, trickling through the states to do. This is for many cities in particular, a very large source of greenhouse gas emissions comes from buildings. When you look at states, it's a little bit more flipped for transportation, but in individual cities, building emissions is a major contributor. Also here, for example, in the desert, when we think about building emissions, we're also thinking about health and safety and comfort in buildings. So a lot of our buildings here in Palm Springs were not necessarily built for year-round occupancy. They were not built for these sort of like 120 plus long stretches. We've got leaky, beautiful glass walls and windows that leak like hell. Like when you think about just kind of keeping your heating and cooling inside. So we really think about this as something that both improves health and safety here in the city, but also will reduce our greenhouse gas emissions footprint. We'll get more into the concepts underpinning this strategy probably in our September meeting. So thinking about both our legislative tools here and the programmatic things that we think are going to be necessary to actually help people do this work. So that's kind of my project.
LP, are you talking primarily right now about building efficiency and performance on city buildings or improving it and housing included?
Everywhere, all buildings in the city. So municipal buildings definitely a target there, but also a lot of the funding that's coming from the federal and state government is targeted at residential buildings. And so we want to make sure we can take advantage of that funding as well.
Okay, I just want to make sure.
Yeah, thanks for the clarification. The next thing here, this is one of Christian's work streams, updating our greenhouse gas inventory and climate action plan. So we want to do a greenhouse gas inventory every couple of years. We don't necessarily have to do one every year. We can talk about that with the committee and the commission, or any future subcommittee and the commission, but it's time for us to update our greenhouse gas numbers just to kind of see how things have progressed over the past few years and get a good theoretical foundation. And then continue to build on that with updating our strategies as we've seen what's worked. What are some areas in the city where we haven't been able to kind of access all the way with our climate work? What are our new priorities and how have we made progress on our previous ones? So that's going to be something that we're focusing on and anticipate working a lot with the commission on. Fully implementing SB 1383 in the Palm Springs food ordinance. So we're hiring a whole person up here to do this route. SB 1383 is basically, I've heard it described in the waste industry as the single biggest change to how waste is handled in the state in 25 years. So it's basically the law that requires residential compost pickup in every city in the state of California. It also requires significant changes to how commercial, properties and buildings, multifamily, et cetera, are handling their waste. It requires changes to how food waste is processed and donated and things here in the city. It requires a whole lot of reporting, and it also requires us to figure out good ways to make use of recycled and compostable products. As I refer to this as the 40,000 ton mulch problem. This is something we will get into. I can't, like, my stress levels won't allow me to get into that today, too extensively, but the short answer here is, we're working on our annual report to Cal Recycle now, so probably either in September or October's meeting, we'll share some data from that annual report.
Just a quick question on this. When you're saying like the food waste and things like that, I'm guessing you're talking about like commercial things as well as like supermarkets, so old bags.
Yep. that's
Um,
included there.
Yeah, because just as an example, like France has their like repurposing, so you can't like throw it away. So I was just making sure we're talking about the right
Yes, definitely.
thing.
Yeah, so supermarkets are definitely, they are impacted a lot by a lot of the things that are changing in 1383. Specifically around food recovery and food donation. And then also around sort of how they're processing the waste that they do that. So we'll come back to that in an excruciating level of detail. And then finally, Christian's other work stream here is building out our multimodal transportation strategy. So this is kind of one of the more cross-functional projects that we have in the city, but or like kind of around how we work with other city departments. A lot of these other things here, maybe we'll work with one department or, we'll work with a specific individual. But with transportation, there are state agencies, regional agencies, other city departments that we work with here. And so one of the main things that Christian is going to be working on is kind of figuring out how we glue all those things together. What additional data do we need to help make operational recommendations and changes on ways to plug the gap between all of those different people who have authority over some things, but not all things. So Christian gets to be the transportation glue. And those are kind of the major, I would say, initiatives that we're working on. We also do a number of different things in terms of, like, for example, we offer a low income discount program for our waste services. We help with battery recycling. We do a lot of different events. We help, we have like this sort of the table at the farmers market where we answer questions, things like that. So those are kind of our key priorities for this year. Does anyone have any questions on that?
Has Christian read Next Door?
I don't think I've thrown you.
There is a discussion now about Amtrak on Next Door.
Oh, interesting. I try not to go in there. There's too many lost cats in there. It makes
Say what?
There's too many lost cats in Next Door, and it makes me like literally cry. I can't read it too often, but
It's a terrible way to have news, but it seems to be where a lot of news is getting transmitted these days. So anyway, so apparently there was an article this past week. I didn't see it about Amtrak
I didn't.
to the Coachella Valley. Okay.
Ooh. Other questions, thoughts? Roy, you seem like you have a question.
Not right
Are we going to go on detail for the 40 tons mulch we are dealing with?
We are,
Okay.
not today,
Okay.
but we most certainly will. And maybe when we talk about subcommittees, we'll talk about that a little bit, because there's one subcommittee that is definitely going to talk about the mulch problem. But we will most certainly go into detail there. Okay, so that's actually all I have on staff update. And I kind of talked about the FY 24 and 25 budget. This is something we'll talk about a little bit more in orientation, just so you all have a sense for like, where do we get our money and how we spend it. Basically, we have kind of a consistent budget that is diverted from our franchise fees, which are fees that are paid back to the city by organizations like Palm Springs Disposal, et cetera, other franchisees that we have here in the city. So we get a diverted portion of that. That comes out to roughly $450,000 a year. That pays for a lot of our staff time, but also any of our kind of operating expenses or consistent programs that happen through the year. The work for turf conversion and for city fleet electrification are funded by separate allocations from the council in this year's budget. And then we also are pursuing a lot of grant funding for some of those programs. Okay. Unfortunately, the next thing is me, so you're gonna have to hear me talk a lot. Does anyone have a question?
I have a question about grant writing is very important. Are you the grant writer?
So the city does have a grant writing consultant. I would say the way that we tend to work with them is that the staff is really the generator of anything related to the subject matter. So to the extent that we're coming up with the concepts, that we're kind of building out the partnerships, figuring out who should submit letter of support, what that structuring looks like, even targeting what funding opportunities to go for, that's us. And then the grant consultant, is good at helping us kind of like shape those into a package. But I'm learning a whole lot about grant writing real fast. Okay, well, with that, I'm just gonna check our chat here really quickly. Thank you, Paul. We will go check on the desert sign, which has a report on street. Okay, so I'm gonna move into talking about turf conversion. Yeah. All right, so I promised excruciating details. There you go. So last year we offered what you would probably say by most measures an extraordinarily successful rebate matching program with Desert Water Agency. So we received a number of requests around the time that I started last year to offer some additional funding to match what Desert Water was already offering, which Desert Water is referred to here in these slides as DWA. That's who we're referring to there. We got a number of requests to offer a matching rebate. A number of other cities in the valley also chose to offer matching rebates. And basically people last year in particular, we were in the throes of that historic drought. People were really interested in getting their grass out of there as quickly as possible. We like to support momentum, we like to support public interest. And so we brought a proposal to this commission, basically saying, hey, we think we've got $150,000 we found in an account. We can probably use that $150,000 and provide some rebates to some projects. The commission, through our conversations, we made a few different recommendations, or the commission made a few different recommendations around doing a sort of a one-to-one match. So Desert Water offers $3. The commission recommended offering $3 as well. With a project size cap of $5,000 per project, which translates out to roughly 1,800 square feet per project. That was primarily to make sure one project, since we didn't have a lot of funding last year, couldn't come in and take all the funding. We also made the decision to basically work through the existing Desert Water project infrastructure. Excuse me. So they already have a team set up to take applications, to go out and approve projects, to monitor those projects at completion, and have some terms and conditions associated with that. So our goal and the commission's recommendation was to align as closely as possible with Desert Water's existing program, to just minimize headache for residents, minimize headache for staff, just kind of make it as easy as possible and just get that money out the door. And so the commission made that recommendation to the council. The council liked it so much that they said, how about $250,000? Those $250,000 were gone in 24 hours. And not only was that money gone in 24 hours, we also had a number of people who put in applications slightly before the program launched who were very sad that they were not eligible for the funding. So we got a lot of people who really wanted this money. So we went back to the council in January, were approved for another just over $300,000, which means we spent about $550,000 on this program last year. That funding was also gone. We also parceled out the funding last year between residential and HOA. So we had specific buckets of money, and we also allocated a bucket of money for low income consumers, which for this program was defined as having to live in what is considered an environmentally designated disadvantaged community. So this is something we'll talk about in orientation, but the state of California has, I believe it's SB4. There's a Cal Enviro screen is the name of the tool. And it basically ranks communities based on different factors around income, proximity to environmental hazards, a variety of different things. And this is something I'll show you also maps in our orientation to get a sense of where in Palm Springs is considered by the state to be our most environmentally burdened communities. So based on the funding that DWA had to support this program, the customer had to live in one of those areas, and also had to be a member of DWA's low income bill assistance program. So that was kind of their way of identifying those target customers. So in our second round, our single family or single owner, like small property residential, also went again in 24 hours. The money set aside for HOAs lasted about 2 weeks. The money set aside for low income property owners lasted longer. DWA did a lot of like on the ground outreach. They sent mailers to customers that they knew were eligible. They had bilingual staff out in the field kind of talking through people. There were kind of two main reasons why we think we didn't see as much uptake in that area. One is because this is a rebate program, people are still faced with paying for it up front and then receiving a rebate for the difference. DWA did make an intervention during the year to try to assist with that by having what they called a landscaper, like a direct pay to landscaper program. So instead of the resident receiving the rebate, a group of sort of pre-qualified landscapers were eligible to receive the rebate. And so in some cases, the landscapers, because they have a few current projects, they can kind of hold the cost on their books for a little while, and they know they're going to get the rebate from DWA. Basically, it was a number of landscapers who've done a lot of projects that have been approved by DWA. It's kind of their core group of landscapers who were sort of certified to be able to offer this. The second reason we think we didn't see as much uptake here is kind of based on like the property owner status of some of our low-income residents. So a lot of our low-income residents are renters, which means they're categorically not eligible. So either they're renting a home or they're renting, in a multifamily or something like that, so they don't have a lawn. The other thing that we saw is that a lot of the low-income homeowners, their lawns already had either done conversions or the grass had kind of just died out, which meant that they weren't eligible for the grass removal incentive because there was no grass to remove. So there were a few different reasons why the team was just like, I think this is going to be a tough nut to crack. It was also a relatively restrictive set of criteria, but was the best that we could find in terms of figuring out how to target those folks at the time. But basically, that's a long summary to say that our task here today is to figure out what modifications we want to make to our 1.15 million that we have allocated for this year to do a couple of different things. So the key goals are streamlining the experience for property owners. Avoiding some of the confusion we had last year between people who were maybe eligible for DWA money, but ours had already run out, or who didn't know when ours had started and ours had ended, or how did the project size work? Like there were a lot of confusion. Encouraging different types of properties. So one of the things that the commission mentioned when we looked at this program last year was a strong desire to focus on HOAs with big lawns. We have a lot of properties here in Palm Springs that have a big old patch of grass. A lot of our residential buildings have actually undergone low water conversions. Like you go around a lot of neighborhoods, depends on the neighborhood a little bit, but you go around a lot, you'll see a pretty good penetration of, desert landscape, native plants, different things like that. But our HOAs still have, especially sometimes once you get to the center, it's just like acres and acres of rolling hills. And then the final thing is to promote simplification and administration. So I'll talk a little bit about some data of what we learned from the last program, just for reference. So Don, you've seen this already as our continuing commissioner, that as of May of 2023, that 500,000 that we had last year yielded 154 approved projects. I would imagine it's probably closer to like 70 that have been completed right now. But this data we compiled it around when the council was looking at this request. So 154 projects that were supported by our funding. Our funding, and when it says partial funding here, that basically means, we gave some of the money, but DWA gave the rest. So we contributed to funding 437,000 square feet of turf conversions, which is a lot. Based on the best data that most water utilities use when estimating the water savings, we're estimating, sorry, the faces are kind of in the way here a little bit, but we're estimating over 27 million gallons of water saved per year as a result of these projects. And as a result of those as well, projected savings across the city of about $82,000 per year. Our water rates, our volumetric water rates here are pretty low, so that number is a little bit lower than you might see in a place with more expensive water. But that's kind of the cost savings that we're looking at across the program. And on average, projects got a rebate of just over $3,000. I'll pause there for some questions or clarification.
Oh, I was just wondering, do we have data from Desert Water Agency for the projects in comparison in terms of water usage? Like, for example, there is a property A that took the rebate, and Desert Water Agency has the annual data of how much of water that property used before the conversion and after the conversion. I mean, that will be really helpful, right? Because
yeah, we don't have that data yet, but I'm sure we can probably get it for a couple of targeted projects, especially if there was anybody who we knew could receive the rebate who would be excited to share that data with us. I think
from my experience, because I was one of, our household is one of the first one that kind of, when I saw this program, I jumped on it in the middle of the COVID. But then I started learning a little bit about permaculture and sustainability around the world and how people are doing it in different ways. And what I realized is like, our programs are really good, but we are missing a connection between the programs. So over here, we are providing the money and encouraging people to take out the grass, but we are not giving them the options or alternatives. Hey, if you're taking out the grass, these are the 5 options you can pick, and one of them can be them putting over a 6-inch layer of mulch, which will be acting as a carbon sink and drawing the greenhouse gases. Everybody hasn't have to do it, but if a gardener or a person really interested in, I don't have an eye for, making it really well, so I threw in mulch over there. But my sister jumped in and she arranged it in a way, it looks beautiful right now. So if we can kind of connect those dots to people and encourage them, hey, you're removing the grass, you're gonna get the money, you can do desert landscaping, or you can put in a thick layer of mulch, which will help the city for us to do the greenhouse gases emission. That can be a little bit of thing that we can think. I don't think many people will participate, but if it's just only 1 or 2 people, that's a start.
Sure, yeah, no, definitely. So in terms of. So when people apply for it and are approved for the rebate, the Desert Water Program is very open-ended in terms of what you can actually do. So what they require is a certain degree of plant cover. So I think it's, I want to say it's like 50% plant cover has to be maintained. They don't fund if you just kind of put in a basketball court, like hardscape, they say, no, that does not count. They provide information about the Coachella Valley Water District's lush and efficient landscaping guidelines, which are kind of the sort of state of the art in terms of recommendations available for landscapers, property owners, et cetera, to improve their lawns. We haven't yet added anything to that list in terms of like other suggestions that people could take in terms of things that they cover their lawns with, so it's definitely something to get at.
When you mentioned HOAs, is it also commercial HOAs? So, because I noticed you've got a couple of retirement communities around here, which have large amounts of lawn and huge amounts of grass. I'm guessing they're being targeted and talked to.
Yes, so those would be eligible. So DWA thinks about things almost more in terms of how many owners there are for a property. So kind of for them, the difference between like an HOA versus a single family residential is like technically like a 4-unit duplex can count as a single family residential. If it was like a small single owner property, whereas an HOA is something that has like multiple owners. So that for them is kind of how those distinctions come up. So those kind of commercial projects that are larger would still be eligible, probably even under like a single owner program. But those would be something we'd like to target. Last year, we did focus on residential. This year, I think DWA would be interested in us opening it up a little bit, but I think still our target projects are residential.
Yeah.
The answer question.
Kind of, yeah, because it's basically the residential retirement communities where you've got lots of retired people with their own lawns.
Exactly. So yeah, I think I would assume that those would be a
I was making sure I'm understanding what Andrew was just asking. That would be, for example, there's some very large apartment complexes that they're still all grass, and those would be considered, is that considered? Where do they
I
fall?
think that would actually potentially be considered commercial.
So what?
Commercial, maybe
Yeah.
based on the size and scale of the project. I'd have to double check on, because I know how we would categorize them, but I'd have to double check with Desert Water to see how they would.
And most everyone who lives around Palm Springs know which ones we're talking
Yeah.
about. I liked Dreamer's comment. It seems like that would be, we had designed this so that DWA could do it, so we wouldn't have to do it. But from what you just said, we could do a side campaign to incentivize mulch.
Sure,
As
yeah, we
one of
could
the
definitely
options.
target that as an option for sure.
Yeah.
We've got all this.
And we can get rid of that 40,000,
Yeah,
whatever.
exactly. Got a lot of mulch. My spider sense is the thing.
I don't see many HOAs doing mulch, but
Hey, you never know. Like
You never
Freeman
know.
said, all of it is one.
but also to encourage them to do sections, mulch sections and gravel.
Yeah, I mean, Caltrans has a really beautiful program where they do it right on the highways, but
Mhm.
if we go to the Palm Desert Costco.
Mhm.
They sprayed out mulch from the highway ramp coming into the street.
Mhm.
So that's the first time I saw in the desert, and if we are going to UCR campus on Bob Hope or Frank Sinatra. To control sand from flying over onto the street, they just spreaded mulch.
Okay,
So
so we
I,
need to promote that in some way. And, but, and we can do it without it being an additional impact on staff,
Right.
because that was the issue about DWA, right, okay.
Yeah, that would probably be something we'd have to handle on our side, but we can put some thought into how we might do something like that.
I didn't hear that, but okay. I
Well-
agree.
Yes. Any other questions on sort of like last year's program and any, that's good?
Is there any information as to what the largest project was?
It's a good question. I don't have information currently. We also. So we had some, because we had the project cap, I think our sizes for what we supported are gonna be a little artificially low. But I want to say we did have like a 130,000 square foot project that we partially supported. I'll get that data and I can send it back to you all.
Because it would be helpful because we're
Right.
trying to look at if we should increase the cap. and
Totally.
that plays
We had a
into
lot
it.
of projects who chose not to move forward because they thought that the rebate wouldn't really move the needle for them because they wanted to do like 100,000 square feet and only like 2,000 of it would have been covered by the match.
Is that like the gentleman mentioned at the start,
Yes, so yes. exactly.
public comment?
Mhm.
Okay. Sorry, I can't remember his name, but
No, you're
he's
good.
still here.
Paul is here, yes.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
Yeah. Yeah, but I can pull that.
Okay.
So that would be hard. I wanna say the average size, well, I guess we can kind of work backwards from the average rebate, which is about $3,000. Which would
Yeah,
be,
I think the document said it was, the average was about 1,500.
yeah, that's generally somewhere between 1,000 and 1,500 square feet is the average size, but I don't have the median size,
Okay.
so that could.
It would be helpful because actually 1,500 is quite large.
Yeah, for resident, that's
Yes.
most, and almost every single family residential project will be smaller than that.
Yes,
Yeah, but I can get that, but
I'm guessing no one's gonna talk to the vast amount of golf courses around us then.
we can,
Yeah, I saw
so
I saw it on the map and I was like, oh, there's more
Go
golf
ahead.
courses than Palm Springs.
There are quite a lot. We do have the Prescott Reserve, which we converted this year, they're not necessarily desert state this year, but
Yeah.
it's going back to nature, but I know the Tacos Creek Golf Course, which is the other remaining public golf course in the city. We're working on doing some turf conversion projects around the perimeter.
Oh.
It's not necessarily popular on the fairway, is that what it's called?
Yeah.
I don't golf. It's not necessarily popular in the middle, but the edges, people are pretty amenable to sort of taking some of that that sort of more buffer space and converting those.
That's quite good.
So that could theoretically be eligible if we choose to target those as well.
I sit corrected.
There are a couple of, there are a couple of courses in Palm Desert, I don't remember, but I've read about it,
Yeah,
that have done a fair amount of xeriscaping. So,
can't be surprised. Right, right.
do you need, you don't need a decision from us today, we need to be working on this information.
I actually kind of do need.
You do need a decision.
Well, I could need a recommendation, and so let me pivot into that really quickly. So we'd like to relaunch the matching rebate soon. We have a lot of interest in it. It's hot, it's dry, people are interested in kind of getting in the queue for these projects.
Mhm.
Desert Water has to do a little bit on their end to kind of make any sort of software tweaks basically for their application, based on whatever recommendations the commission has for what that rebate should look like. And so there are two possible major changes that we're asking the commission to consider. One is decreasing the per square foot match amount from $3 to $1 per square foot, which enables us to support more projects. And then in tandem with that, it's sort of like a combined recommendation, removing or at minimum raising the per project cap. So if you dig into the staff report, there's a little bit of math in there. It's not my most elegant math that I've ever done. But basically, we're kind of looking at like a two-part optimization problem here. We want to figure out how to support bigger projects. We want to make sure we can support as many projects as possible, but we don't necessarily have like the economic sensitivity analysis on what is that rebate amount that makes how many more people do the project, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So $4 per square foot motivates a certain number of people to do it. We saw that $6 per square foot motivated a lot of people to do it, which was great. But the question I think that we looked at last year and that we also have before us this year is what is going to be the best way for us to drive as many of these projects forward as possible. My assumption, kind of based on some of the analysis that we did, just sort of like the really brief stuff, is that if we're able to remove that project cap, and if we remove the project cap, I think we need to reduce the per square foot rebate, because otherwise we could have a situation where one project kind of takes up, or it's like it goes from like 9 projects we can support to like 50 or something like that. I think that $1 per square foot will still help us motivate those additional projects that are larger, because they'll still be getting a significant amount of additional funding for it. So the question here is, A, does the commission feel like we have enough information to make a recommendation back to Desert Water? Because I would like to kind of hear this commission's thumbs up before I don't want to, I can't make this call. I need you guys to kind of opine on this, but if you don't feel ready to do that, then we can wait and revisit it in September. And then second, just sort of how do you feel about those questions?
One thing I could suggest, is it possible to look at tiered rebate or matching? So for the smaller projects, you can match more, for the larger projects, you can match less. So that way your larger projects won't destroy everything, but your smaller projects are still incentivized, because that way, like, if we can offer different price points, then I don't see why we can't tier it.
It's a good question. So I would imagine that is more of a question, like logistically speaking, for Desert Water, because they're actually doing the kind of like allocation of the funding. I don't know that they would be excited to do it, but I think it could be possible. One of the other reasons I think they initially had proposed, looking at the sort of going from 1-to-1 to 3-to-1 rebate is very simple, which is they have $3 million for their project this year and we have $1 million. And so that means we'll run out at the same time, which is not what happened last year, and led to a lot of confusion and frustration. Because people were like, well, maybe I should wait for you guys to get more money, or like, I don't know, like, so wait, I don't get the match, but I do get some money. Like it was kind of very confusing. So just kind of brute force, logistically speaking, running out at the same time is not a bad idea. However, I think it could be possible for us to look at a tiered system, like say, the first X number of square feet, like maybe up to that average project size, like maybe up to that 1,500 gets a higher amount, and then beyond that it's a lower one. I would just have to figure out and work with them on how we might actually implement something.
Yeah, because I'm happy with like both options, but it's just a way to help it scale and avoid large projects just nailing everything and then small projects get nothing.
Right, yeah, fair. Okay.
Yeah. I had a question. It'll come back to me. Do they make distinctions between large projects and small projects, or do they just fund
Currently,
it
no.
until it's gone?
They just have a flat, like it's, first come, first served. for them.
So if we want to give more to HOAs, this is an awkward thought for me, because it's city money, so you want it to have people to access it as their voters and not necessarily be all used up by an HOA. But an HOA is a big social model.
Right.
For how do we to get rid of grass?
Sure, like how do we
If
deal
you
with that
drove
share?
in that neighborhood over there and there was no grass, then you'd start feeling like you need to get rid of grass.
Mhm.
So I lean toward, folks funding HOAs
Mhm.
more than single family homes.
Sure.
But it's an awkward position
Sure, so what I'll
for those
say.
reasons.
What I'll say on that is. I had a sort of a really clearly formed thought, and it is now not.
We
Clear.
did, they applied to us for and we said, you can include this one and none. We told.
Oh, right, yeah, so last year we did set a few criteria around that, sort of as to who would be eligible versus who wouldn't. Last year, we also, as you may remember, put a certain amount of money in each category bucket.
Right.
So we had, 100,000 for HOAs and 100,000 for single family as an example.
Right.
Desert Water is proposing that we actually don't bucket them that way, because it kind of breaks down naturally, usually as it is, and also
Right.
if we reduce the rebate amount, we probably won't have the same kind of rush on the first day, is the assumption, but though it may not be true, that we had with the full one-to-one match. So if we remove those buckets and reduce the rebate amount, it gives us a little more flexibility, it gives those bigger projects time to come to fruition, I think is the thinking.
So that, one more time. If we
So,
remove the buckets, it actually makes it easier and the bigger, and more big projects are gonna get funded, and then
it gives us
and
a
then
little
I-
more flexibility on which project, like, we don't have to say like, only these projects can be funded up to this amount, and we run out of one really quickly. Also, if we reduce the per project funding, it means that people don't have to have the project ready on day one.
Mhm.
And those bigger projects tend to have time or take time to come together, even though you don't have to submit a lot of information to apply, it's basically just how big is the space, where is it, show us a picture, proving there's still grass in it. You don't have to have a landscape plan done or anything by that point, but usually for HOAs, they want to have board agreement and things like that before they bring it to the table. So we kind of need the funding to last a little longer to get those projects in.
I was thinking a lot about HOAs and large projects this afternoon, and I went through your numbers pretty carefully, and I think you did say that really there's no way of knowing why some of the HOAs or larger projects didn't get proposed.
Mhm.
But also, I think we need to look a little bit more closely at what is meant by an HOA, and they aren't all the same.
Yeah.
For example, I live in an HOA where each individual home is responsible for the yard, front and back. So the residents there apply as individuals
Right.
to get rebates, and a lot of them have gotten rebates.
Mhm.
But we have large grassy common areas,
Mhm.
and it would be nice to be able to, remove the turf and replace it with something in those areas.
Sure.
I think there are other HOAs where they also have large common grassy areas, but all of the front yards are taken care of by the HOA. And so in order to do all of the houses in HOAs like that, it might be very expensive. But it could also be a decision by the HOA to do some proportion
Sure.
of those houses in the course of a year, and then another year do more of them. But it would be interesting to see if they did step up and did a portion of the front yards in a given year, based upon a higher cap. So I think that's something that I guess my position is I would like to see the cap raised, and I kind of like to see maybe no more than $2 per square foot match to allow for more toward larger projects. But also we would get some idea of, is $2 still a good incentive, or maybe is one still a good incentive?
That makes sense. I think one of the thoughts also behind removing the project caps and taking away the buckets is to allow more flexibility for those different kinds of HOAs,
Mhm.
so that you don't have, an HOA project that's kind of tried to shoehorn into one category, but it's not actually the right fit for how that HOA is set up.
And it may not be the same in every HOA in terms of how the projects would be paid for.
Sure.
I think my guess is it would be out of the reserves for the HOA.
How about the public spaces like schools? Are they participating in the program, or are we approaching them?
Good question. So we were not targeting public projects for last year's round. That's something that's an interesting question, like for us as a city, as to sort of how might we fund some of those specific projects. I know there's a few projects we would like to do. Sorry, I also just got a note from Desert Water, so I'm just checking to see if they have any particular we wanted while we're talking. So I think we could, something like the Palm Springs Unified School District, they're actually technically a separate entity from us, so they would be more than welcome to apply, I think, to this and encouraged to do so. It's also something we're encouraging the airport to take a look at if they've got a project that they want to do. But we want to make sure that, like, our public facilities aren't taking up the whole funding, and maybe we think about, like, it would be good for us to know what of those projects are people interested in doing in the next year, so we can maybe even come up with some additional funding to help match those.
And who can apply on behalf of the city hall?
Yeah, yeah, the city hall grass is on the chopping block. So I am hoping that we won't have to use this money for that,
Yeah.
but that we can allocate some separate funding and some grant funding.
And what is I was one of the participants when the program launched, and it's been already 2 years. And what is the when is the end game for this rebate program? Are we hoping we want to convert the whole grass patches in, except the golf courses, into desert landscape? Or what is our last straw for this program?
All grass gone.
Hard with golf courses.
Well,
Oh,
one
nice.
year at a time.
Yeah, so that's what we are hoping for. We are gonna continue this program till we get most of the grass and we are like, okay, we are at a point, we are satisfied with this.
So I
program.
would say Desert Water appears to be interested in offering the program kind of in perpetuity. I think it would be interesting for us as a city to look at what have been the successes and how many more projects could we motivate with our city funding. I don't know that we'll be able to get $1 million every year for it. We might, kind of depends on how this year goes, I think, if there's still that much interest and we're still motivating that many more projects. But my end game is all grass.
I'm up for that.
I think that, Roy's comments really helped because they reminded me of how complex even thinking about an HOA is. So I'm thinking that, $1 million sounds like a lot of money, but it's not.
not that many projects.
I'm leaning now toward, let's decide on a size, take off the caps, let DWA do it.
And also the commission, you can feel free to discuss among yourselves as well. I don't have.
I
to-
guess that's the
Yeah.
proposal. Get rid of the caps. And we don't need to put extra work into trying to figure out which projects to do. DWA can decide it all. And so then we decide on $1 or $2.
My only concern with if we remove the caps, then we could leave all the single family houses just get pushed out where they don't have any funding left.
Whoever moves fastest, unfortunately.
So the smaller the match, the more projects we can fund. So if I feel, or the sort of like, when I was kind of working through the analysis, I felt most comfortable with the world in which the cap is removed if the rebate is lower, because you can fund like hundreds of projects with that. However, if we don't think that that is necessarily going to motivate that audience, I agree that we should think about, either doing a tiering sort of basis or,
And it may be good to consider this is a transitional year where we're doing that to learn what kind of responses that we get.
It also seems like if there are more projects, then it's going to be noticed and it will attract additional people in the future to go ahead and apply.
yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
The projects tend to seed other projects for you.
Is it mandatory for the bigger projects to do it all in one
No, they
year?
don't have to do it all at once. So they can do a subset of their grass if they choose to do so.
I mean, that's something we can consider because if it's a big HOA where the HOA is managing everything and they have like 20 acres of grass and they want to convert it, we will be out of our funds. But if we say, hey, because you are a bigger project, would you guys consider like doing it in phases for over next 5 years? And we can support them every year, but at the same time, we are focusing more on the residential or smaller projects. Because once we have all the smaller projects done, we can focus on rest of the bigger projects. So it's just a way around, where we say HOAs, we will support you, but if you have like 100,000 square feet, maybe let's spread it over 5 years because we wanna support everybody. Then we will have some breathing space to support the individual homeowners to take advantage of this program because it was a little hard, do the conversion and get the rebate for an individual homeowner. It was a little bit economically not
Sure.
Efficient for them.
So unfortunately, based on the way that our funding is allocated right now, both for us and for Desert Water, we don't have the ability to make a multi-year funding commitment. Like I hear you, I think that would be a great idea if we say like, oh, we'll fund you over the next 5 years. Because I think that also even some HOAs might prefer that flexibility to know that they would have funding for the next 5 years to do the project. Because our funding in this case was allocated just for this one fiscal year, and Desert Water pulls a lot of grant funding and other sources for this program. We can kind of only think about it year on year. We also last year, I think, hoped that we would see more HOA projects that would think about like little pieces of project, but I think our cap was just low enough to where HOAs were saying that's not necessarily like a meaningful size project for us to do at that point. So it would be a matter of setting the cap differently, I think, to kind of get to that phased approach.
Another way to look at it, even though it would be nice to satisfy as many individual homeowners as possible, is a square foot of grass is a square foot of grass, no matter where it is. So removing grass reduces water use. So what's really important, and you have statistics in here, is how much grass was removed and how much water use declined. It's a different way of looking at it, but really that's our goal, is to reduce water use overall.
Standpoint.
which is sort of a variation on what I said.
Yeah.
Just go with it.
Do we want to try to congeal any of the recommendations into sort of potential things to debate? So I'm kind of hearing two different sets of recommendations. So one set that I'm hearing is remove the cap, you know, think about a lower rebate, either at $2 or $1 as well. So that's kind of category one recommendation. And that's sort of with an eye toward, you know, a square foot of grass is a square foot of grass. Let's see how many people we can motivate with this lower rebate amount, remove the cap. You know, let's see what happens. Let's see what kind of project we motivate with that. The second category of recommendations I'm hearing is we want to figure out a way to still protect and provide space for small property owners, so like single property owners. And so maybe thinking either about a tiered like a tiered rebate where smaller projects, like maybe you get X number of dollars up to a certain number of square feet and beyond that, or thinking about a project size cap to still like maybe a higher project size cap, but not so big that it would enable 100,000 square foot project to come in. You know, I was actually kind of surprised when I did some of the analysis, how many 100,000 square foot projects we could fund if we had a $1 per square foot rebate. It's a lot of 100,000 square foot projects, and then also would still allow for a lot of single family projects. I've only heard of like 2 projects being contemplated right now that are over 50,000 square feet. I still don't know if we're getting those kind of like mega projects yet, but so those sound kind of like the 2 categories for recommendations I'm hearing. Are there any aspects that I missed that people want to kind of add to the 2 possible recommendations?
Well, with regards to like my side of the recommendation, like removing the caps and going to the lower rebate, like I'm totally fine with, especially if we're doing it year on year. My only concern for like trying to cover the different areas, as you mentioned, the residential was gone in 24 hours.
Yeah, totally.
So it's an incredibly popular like residential, but as you said, first come, first served. So if the residential are going to take it all in 24 hours, and the HOAs and businesses are too late, then sucks to be them. So like as long as people are getting looked after, I'm fine. And again, grass is grass. As long as we're getting rid of it, we get the same end result.
It would be impossible, but I actually was thinking along Roy's line earlier and saying, maybe we should require that it be grass visible from the street.
Yeah, what is the most?
So then we change behavior by changing what's visible, but yeah. I'm trying to think through, you know, for someone who's doing 30,000 square feet, is whether we give them $30,000 or give them $60,000 is that going to make a difference? Because they're going to have a big budget in the first place.
Yeah.
So I think this year, or I think the question that we're looking at with HOAs between last year and this year is, are we giving them $5,000 or $30,000? Because last year, the most they could get was $5,000, so none of them did the project.
So say it one more time.
So because of so if we're looking at like last year versus this year, the dollar comparison is actually like $5,000 versus $30,000. So I think you're gonna get a lot of projects that people were really excited to potentially do the work, but just weren't gonna do it for $5,000 because that's such a, whether it's 30 or 60, I would say, you know, it's more than 5. So we're gonna be motivating a lot of projects that just we wouldn't have been motivating last year.
So you're thinking a higher a $2 rebate.
I actually think a lower rebate
Yeah.
is sort of what I was thinking here, is like that's sort of the next step. I think if we're
Removing the cap and having.
Because I think what LP's trying to say is they would be doing the project anyway. So if we're giving them the $1 rebate, they'd still be getting significantly more than they would have before, because it was capped at 5,000.
Right, okay.
So they'll still do the project, and $1 would allow us to do more projects, which from your maths table works out quite well.
And it may not, and it may be that a lot of the HOAs don't have enough money to fund a really big project, so that they may not take away from the smaller
Yeah.
projects as well.
Right. So, yeah, I think it's just a question of whether the commission feels that the $1 per square foot rebate feels like enough to motivate additional projects, or whether you feel like, you know, based on your understanding or your experience or your hearing from the public, that something higher would be more necessary.
What would be your suggestion, since you're the only one that's actually done it here? Like, would the $1 or $3 make that much of a difference? Would you have done it anyway?
I did it when they're providing $2 and there is no matching rebate from the city. So I essentially got $2 from Desert Water Agency. I mean, I was happy with that, but as I said, the problem is like the public doesn't have other options because they have to spend the upfront money.
Right,
I mean, I'm okay with completely like Desert Water Agency giving them $3 and city giving them $1, which is essentially they're getting $4 per
Yeah.
square foot compared to what we are getting when the program started. But it's just educating more around what are the options they have, and that can be a really good option, because if we are talking them, if I applied for the program, I have only like 75 days to 90 days to finish the project, and me hiring a crew of people to remove the grass that's already existing and placing a new garden is hard. But if I have time and I'll stop watering the grass and it dries on its own for the summer, and I'm making sure, it's completely dry, then converting into a desert landscape is easier. The hard work is people coming in, crew coming in, removing the grass when it's still green because it's heavy, they need to get rid of it. So that's what adding up the operational cost.
Sure.
So if we go into the details, that's where my problem is. It's
Yeah.
green grass and I'm hiring 5 people and paying them money to remove it. And
Okay.
that's not worth the money.
Sure, yeah, that's fair. From my experience, I know the DWA team has been pretty flexible with property owners. If they say like, hey, here's what I'm trying to do, it's gonna be outside of this 90-day window. They've been pretty flexible in the past, but I think the point is well taken in terms of like, what's going to actually be the most time and cost efficient way to remove the grass itself. We can check.
well, I'm quite happy with the moving it down to $1 then. Remove the cap and see how it goes this year, and we can always make adjustments next year.
Anybody opposed to that?
No.
Safe space?
Shall we make a motion?
The chair and vice chair can decide when you want to close debate.
Then that sounds good.
I'm not sure, but if it requires a motion, that's all. I mean, we do some things by consensus.
I don't know the difference. I don't know enough to know what it would need at the time.
I just from my personal experience, I think this is an important enough thing. It'll have a lot of visibility. There'll be a lot of questions. I
Okay.
think it would be good if we took a vote.
We'll rely on your experience.
So would anyone like to make the motion of the recommendation itself?
I'll move what you just said. That we reduce, that we reduce the match to $1 and we eliminate the cap.
I'll go through, should I do a roll call vote or do you want to do voice vote?
There's a second.
Second.
All in favor?
All right.
I
Any opposed? Okay,
Okay.
great, thanks.
at the with the possibility of prolonging this discussion, one thing I wanted to bring up is the issue of allowing artificial turf,
Yes, oh, yes, we can talk about that, yeah.
because that's something where we differ from DWA. They just allow it, and there's a kind of a statement that the city of Palm Springs discourages it. And that's really not quantitative. I don't know how DWA makes decisions about that. If somebody's proposal includes artificial turf, I think from the point of view of the commission, we should not allow We should not fund artificial turf at all. It's based on, it's made from petroleum. And it has to be disposed at some time in the future. It may look nice, but I think I think we should consider not allowing it.
Okay, and I apologize, that was an oversight not putting in the presentation today on artificial turf. So just for the new commissioners, so you're aware, so last year we did have a discussion on whether we wanted to support artificial turf. The recommendation from the commission was that we not allocate any funding to projects using artificial turf. When the recommendation went before the city council, because it was the first time the funding was being appropriated, the council wanted to still see allowances for artificial turf, being supported by the funding. Desert Water, as Roy mentioned, does allow artificial turf as one of the options for replacing the grass. So where we settled last time was a recommendation, that, as Roy mentioned, that, Commissioner Clark, that city projects not, or that projects receiving city funding minimize the use of artificial turf. Desert Water, when they went out to kind of do their inspections and sign off on the rebates, which they do after people converted it to make sure it's not a basketball court, basically was keeping like a rough tally on how much artificial turf there was, because we were targeting 15% or less across the program. That would still allow for maybe 1 or 2 projects that were real turfy, or people to do like a strip for the dog or whatever. And so we did largely stay below that. I mean, it's not a particularly scientific estimate that we have there, but if the commission wants to put forward a recommendation that we not fund artificial turf, we can definitely carry that forward and see how we might implement something like that. It would be something I think on the Desert Water side, that if they were still funding artificial turf, would be logistically challenging to implement in any stricter way, but I can definitely carry forward the recommendation and see how far we can get.
And I recognize that the logistics would be difficult, but I think it's something that we should at least speak up about.
Sure. Anyone on the commission want to add anything to that?
The reason that we don't want to recommend artificial turf, because at the end we need to dispose of it, and it's made with petroleum only, or are there any environmental challenges around it?
Well, it's made with petroleum, so that's a problem right now. And anything that's produced from petroleum is a problem for the environment. But artificial turf doesn't last forever, and maybe 10 or 15 years. So then it has to be disposed, and it's disposed of, and it's not going to decompose. It's just going to go into landfill. So I think that's something that we should think a little bit more about. Maybe not at tonight, but I wanted to bring it up.
It will be nice, as a sustainability commission, we have some funds allocated in the future to kind of conduct some experiments to see what will be the temperature in front of a house if they're using artificial turf or DG. I had DG at one point when I did the project, and last year I was up early in the morning at 5 digging it out because I used a thermometer. The reason I asked that question is, yes, artificial turf is made with petroleum, and at the same time, it's not cooling, providing any kind of cooling effect, which connects us to the building efficiency of our agenda. So if we can kind of think, how can we pull these things together? I would say, along with artificial turf, there are other things like hauling in like big boulders and stacking them together as a structure will also increase the temperature. And so nitty-gritties are really detailed version, but that's a good start when you mentioned that. Yes, I highly recommend that we kind of advertise against using artificial turf and making sure we are educating, hey, not just because we don't like it, because it's made with petroleum and there is no way we can recycle it and it's ending up in the landfill. That's the main motivation. We don't want anything to end up in the landfill. So if we can give that detailed explanation to public, I think some people will understand it.
Sure, I think that's a great point. Also, kind of to your point about sort of the temperature impact. So that's actually something that we looked into a little bit at the beginning of this program, like the first when we started digging around on this. The city of Phoenix and the city of Tucson have actually done a ton of research on urban heat island impacts of like converting away from grass, because there are some potential like local micro scale level temperature spikes that you can cause if you're not thoughtful about how you're doing it. So I know that's something that the planning commission is also really interested in right now. So as part of the general plan update, we are going to be looking at urban heat island impacts and how to mitigate those, and if there are strategies we want to propose, we'll bring that to this commission as well when they get ready to start looking at the general plan. So I'll come back. Yes.
So I know in Europe, there's from the old research group I worked in, there are issues like removing trees and shade causes significant heat increases, which damage your roads, which damage all kinds of shenanigans. And anything that can reduce the heat around here, I'm for. Like,
More shading.
you're not used to it. It's so
Yeah.
hot. Like, Lindsay is sick of me mentioning this, but like,
I mention it all the time too. I keep
Yeah.
threatening to move to Long Beach.
Yeah, I can confirm, you did that the other day.
if we move to a fire, it would still be colder.
So yes, absolutely. So I think, so what I'm hearing is, re-up our recommendation on no artificial turf. Let's see how close we can get to that. Underline why we are not recommending artificial turf, because it is, it doesn't decompose, it has to go to the landfill, it's not sort of part of the natural system and element. And then also, continuing to look at the ways that we can continue to convert our landscapes to desert landscapes in ways that mitigate our urban heat island impacts.
I think going along with the latter, DWA makes available lush and efficient. But I think we could go a lot further in terms of recommending certain types of plants. And I think it was probably a good step that they had that course for gardeners. But I think more can be done in terms of what is really beneficial, and also thinking about, bees and butterflies and so forth, making a habitat for them.
Do we, so Living Desert has courses on the.
Yes, good.
Let me, LP, if we went with this and stopped and didn't say anything about artificial turf at the moment, where's the next step? Does the money start going out?
Once.
This
DWA
doesn't
has-
have to go to council.
No, it
It doesn't have to go to council,
Basically,
because
this is the sort
because
of.
our, last year it went to council because we're requesting. So council won't be saying anything about this.
No, they've appropriated.
It'd be us saying it to DWA, and DWA is gonna say, oh, we don't wanna add that to it.
Potentially. So we can, I'm happy to,
So we can
Strongly
start
encourage
a new
recommendation.
program or a new effort to encourage everything that we're concerned about, but we can't put it into this.
I would say that is, with the exception of artificial turf, because we've already been talking about that as part of this
Right.
program, I would say the additional recommendations we have are further work that we can do
Okay.
above and beyond kind of this specific program. I think there's educational material we can put out, we can, come to 1PS and talk to residents and owners about specific recommendations here. We can start to maybe, focus on a couple of projects that we know might be interested in doing this work and target them. But yes, that I think that is probably a fair assumption that additional things would be additional programs.
Okay. So,
Now that 1PS is featuring informational session each time, that's up to 15 to 20 minutes. It'd be a good idea to go before 1PS. And I think there are a number of us around the table that pick at that time.
yeah,
Lisa?
so we can go with this. We can, and so the one remaining question about going with this is, do we want to ask them to, and
No,
then they're gonna say no.
Well, I think we should just make a statement that we recommend people don't use artificial turf and go about educating people as well, but not make that a
Condition.
sticking point for
Yeah.
going forward. I think it would be too hard logistically.
Okay, so
Does the commission feel comfortable with that?
Sounds good.
Okay, great. Then I will carry forth the recommendation, and we can add that into our materials that we use.
Okay.
Okay. We go on there?
Yeah.
Yep.
Right, thanks. Okay, so I'm trying to get back to my agenda here to make sure I take us in the right order. Okay, so, we have a lot of stuff to still talk about. It is currently 7:10. I promised everyone I'd get them out at 7:30. So I'm going to make a proposal, that you should feel free to say no to. So the next item of old business is we had a report on the battery recycling program, which is basically to share how it's been going over the year, and get more commissioners involved in thinking about and helping support it. I'm gonna propose that we actually continue that to the next meeting for two reasons. One, time so we can kind of get through the rest of the agenda items. The second is we'll also have a lot more new commissioners at our next meeting. So I think that would be something that's a good example of like work that came from the commission that has continued into kind of like a citywide program. So my proposal is to continue that item to the next meeting, but if anyone would really like to hear about it tonight, we can definitely talk about it.
Okay.
Commissioner Clark, I might also turn to you because that's your program, so.
Just one question about that.
Yeah.
Were there takers of the boxes at the last 1PS meeting?
We got rid of our boxes real
Good.
fast. So, and I actually should have brought them to this meeting, I mean, they're in my office, it's not that far, but, okay, so we'll dig into batteries, I think, a little bit more at the next meeting, and we can talk more about battery boxes and distributing and stuff as well.
That was going to be my report, actually was, we got rid of a lot of them.
Great, cool.
At 1PS.
Yes, well, you are free to continue to look at that report should you choose.
Oh, the guy's not over something.
Vaughn.
Oh,
Always showing up.
oh, he's in.
Oh,
Yeah.
yes, he had to be one.
I was just like, is that a coded message? Thank you, Paul, I appreciate that. Yes, so that's an example of a battery box that we
Show and tell.
Yes, indeed. Okay, so I will now move really quickly to talk about shredding. So this is we're gonna change gear a little bit. Back to my little slides. And I know I said the slides help me talk less, just imagine how much I would have talked about this. Okay, so shredding and e-waste events. So this is also something, there's a really brief staff memo in your packet about this, but to summarize for the new commissioners, we hold, generally speaking, 3 combined shredding and e-waste events every year. These events feature between 2 and 4 basic big trucks that run a shredder on the back of them, so documents are shredded like here on site. And then a couple of trucks that collect e-waste for like secure hard drive destruction, separation into the saleable and recyclable materials, and safe processing, etc. These are very highly attended events, so the attendance can fluctuate quite a lot. So you get 100 on a slow day, you get 1,000 on a big one. It is impossible to know in advance which event it is going to be. I can anticipate a question of, can we have people sign up online? I'm hoping we can have some people sign up online, but this is an extraordinarily offline group of people who comes to our shredding events. These are our phone callers and our phone users there, not online, but we can try to make some things of it. These events, like I said, super popular, especially e-waste collection. There's a really strong environmental tie in there, but they are also a lot of work and pretty expensive. And so I know Commissioner Barrett has been really involved over the past year with us. Commissioner Clark has been really involved over time, though you and I haven't worked on these as much together. And so I have 3 goals, basically, what I'm thinking about shredding for next year. The overarching goal is, how do I reduce the number of gray hair I get from each shredding event? The secondary goals are as follows. So one is increasing predictability and reducing the workload for staff and volunteers. So over the past year, and my understanding for at least a year or so before, we tended to go kind of with a different service provider every other event or so. We'd make a lot of switches. We'd make changes to the routing. We'd be working on contracting. You know, there's kind of a lot of like turmoil involved in each individual event. And so kind of, you know, we're pulling in staff kind of and volunteers sort of at the last minute based on estimates for who we think is going to be there, what the different service providers need, et cetera. So predictability also, I think, comes into play for some of our residents. So especially some of our very offline residents like to plan 6 months in advance as to when the next shredding event is. And when we're scheduling event by event, I have no idea when it's going to be, because we don't necessarily have that predictability from our service providers, who are very popular. It's kind of hard to pin some of these folks down because there's not that many of them. So sometimes the scheduling can get a little tricky where, like, you know, we've got to book out 9 months in advance to get an event in April or something like that. So number one, increase predictability and reduce workload, or streamline workload, I would say. The second is supporting like local vendors and companies that provide workforce pathways in the green economy. So especially when we look at things like e-waste recycling and things like that, there are a number of organizations that have started to emerge in Coachella Valley, in the Inland Empire, who are doing job training programs for young people who may not have had direct access to environmental careers. So if we're going to do these events anyway, let's think about the kind of like the triple bottom line aspect here. How can we use our money to support strong local economy, et cetera, kind of thinking about that. And then improving the customer experience for residents. So no one is happy at the shredding event. I'm not happy. People coming to shred aren't happy. Commissioner Britton's usually in a pretty good mood. And somehow I really respect that. But most people are not. Like coming to the shredding event and leaving feeling awesome. Whether that's because they had to wait in a long line in order to drop off their stuff, whether that's because they feel like they found out later that they wanted to find out about what was going on, whether because the signage was confusing, whether because we've been there since 4 a.m, we can go to a lot of different reasons why. But particularly residents, I think, thinking about this, how can we just kind of continue to improve the customer experience? What can we actually meaningfully change? And B, we've got all these people in one place. What are we doing to kind of take advantage of that in terms of like, are we delivering additional environmental education? Are we, providing information about new programs? What we have this like 1,000-person captive audience, just like Don says no, which is fine, but they're also all sitting in their cars idling for 2 hours, which isn't great from an environmental perspective either. So those are kind of the goals. Initially, we had discussed in the subcommittee on waste and recycling that we would like to make actually a relatively large change in how we do these events and think about, because we're not the only people who do shredding events in the valley. There's realtors associations who do them, other cities, there's other organizations that are kind of civically oriented. Shredding events are pretty common and popular, which is why it's so hard for us to book the vendors. Palm Springs Disposal does e-waste days, things like that. So we kind of were thinking about like, do we want to pivot to a partnership model? Do we want to, ABC? We wanted to get input from the commissioners on this. Unfortunately, I'm running up against the time pressure of needing to go ahead and book vendors like now, in order to provide the fall service that we would like to do. So I'm proposing for this year kind of an interim step, which is instead of contracting one vendor, like vendors for an event by event, is contracting for the full year. So establishing like a full year relationship, going ahead and booking those 3 events now. Other dates and conflicts that come up in the future be darned. I think that's also why we've maintained that flexibility in the past, is because we want to make sure that we're not conflicting with like a major other event happening in the city. But I think we kind of just have to put our stake in the ground, go ahead and book some vendors. And that way, hopefully we'll get kind of first pick of the vendors that we think align with our other goals most effectively. But the other questions that we have here are, is it a good idea to start thinking about partners we can bring in so that maybe they can take on a different role in the future? How can we maximize that environmental value? So Commissioner Walker sent me a number of questions about sort of where's that paper going? Are there different ways that we can think about using the paper? To date, the paper is shredded on site, turned into like little pulpy stuff, and then it's taken directly for recycling. So it's not diverted anywhere else.
Sorry, where is it taken?
It's taken basically to Burbank where they do the recycling. So taken to the recycling processing facility. In terms of how the cost breaks down, which is another question I think you had, most of the costs that we're paying is for time and labor. So that's for the staff who operates the trucks. The percentage of that cost for on the shredding side that's actually for the material itself is, I would say, like 15% of the overall cost. Mostly it's the labor and like bringing the truck that we're paying for. But there is, it's not zero that we're paying for that, but that is most of what we're paying for is material and labor. And I believe those were kind of and then you had some suggestions that I'll let you share when we kind of get into that. And then the third thing is, what else can we do to continue to improve the experience here as events for everyone? But I'm really thinking for the residents particularly, not quite so selfishly for myself. And so that's kind of where we're at with shredding. The short version of the question is anybody upset if I do a full year contract and don't make any changes this year? The second is, does anyone have any thoughts on some of these pivots that we should start to make, either up from your experience working on these or attending them or hearing from people who've attended them?
Would you repeat the first one?
Does anyone mind if she does the whole year, and we don't have to keep doing it ad hoc? It seems like a lot less effort, a lot happier.
I think that's a good idea.
Yeah.
It's a great idea.
Great, so no one has any, does anyone have any also general questions or thoughts on these events and how or why we do them?
No, we're good.
You're good, Commissioner Park?
Well, I've experienced them as somebody standing there doing logistics and also somebody driving through, dropping things off. And actually, I really enjoyed doing the logistics.
Great.
I was the one who stood out by LCLO and told people, well, stay to the right if you're just recycling, or if you just have shredding, go to the left if you have electronics. But I found that people were so thankful, probably more than half of the people said, thank you for doing this. And they were very pleased about it, and it was gratifying.
That's,
And there were occasional people that drove into the cones because they still couldn't figure out where they were going. But that happened. The other thing is that the last one, which was like the makeup,
Mhm.
where it was just shredding.
Yeah.
That was so easy to go through. I don't think there's only one sign that said turn in here, but there didn't need to be people standing out there.
Right.
And it was very easy. So
Mhm.
if somehow we can, set things up so that we don't need as many signs, that would, I think it would be smoother.
Yes, and so actually for the benefit of the new commissioner, so one of the reasons that I'm bringing forth this proposal is that we had an issue with the April event, which is our most popular event because it's tax season, where the vendor we had identified for our shredding decided at the last minute they didn't want to agree to our contract terms, and this was at 4 p.m. on Friday, the day of the shredding event being Saturday. And so we had been in contact with the Realtors Association, who also were hosting an event the same day. We'd been in contact because we were like, oh, how funny. But then I let them know the night before, I was like, hey, you guys want to get a few more people, and they were like, send them over, let's do it. Unfortunately, we had 700 people try to come that day. And the Realtors event was not set up to accept 700 people. So we actually ended up covering the cost of that event, just kind of as like a goodwill gesture of the Realtors event, as like a goodwill gesture, because, they were stressed. No one was happy on this day. It was also 100 degrees. It was like really hot, really early. And it was like that one hot day that we had in spring. But we ended up hosting a makeup shredding event with a different local vendor, which was like so easy. I didn't even have to, like, there was nothing for me to do. I just like came into the office and like did work, because then I was in the way of being out there. As opposed to normally when I think all the volunteers are kind of like really on the pavement. But as Commissioner Clark mentioned, it was very streamlined. One change we did make this year was to separate e-waste and shredding into the front and back parking lots. So that way you could theoretically have people just kind of going once through and not having to kind of make pit stops. But we haven't had like a full proper scale event to test that yet.
I haven't attended any of the shredding events, so I'm not familiar with the logistics, but my question is like, are they shredding just the paper or CDs, credit cards?
Good question. So. No, I'll have to double check. I looked it up earlier and I'm blanking on it. We are. Primarily, I think just shredding paper, because the e-waste, like anything that's CDs or anything like that is going into the e-waste. Something like a credit card is a good question that I'm blanking on. But if it's like a CD or a hard drive or something, that's going into the e-waste, which is not being shredded on site, that gets shredded off site. But the paper, I believe, is just paper that's being shredded on site.
One thing to consider, my HOA has a shredding event once a year and it's strictly shredding. And they used, I forget the company they used, but they did say up front that people could bring CDs. And I questioned that. They didn't take the packages, the plastic,
Right.
Yes.
but they did take the CDs themselves.
Interesting.
So that's something that, might be considered as an option, or like pose it to some of the potential vendors.
Yeah, totally.
I think it was,
Well, is your question kind of, does that contaminate the recycled product? Is that where you're going with this?
I mean, generally, I was thinking like, how can we minimize the impact overall? Because imagine we are hosting a shredding event and people are waiting in the cars for 30 minutes, 20 minutes in ideal situation. That's having a higher carbon footprint that we are making for that day. But another suggestion is like, if you're using a normal paper, but not the glossy one, we can put it in the compost. I mean, everybody is supposed to compost right now, and we have the green bins given to the places, unless there is some private information, but I don't think with food, that's gonna be an issue. Technically, I got a $20 shredder from Amazon and a $35 one from Revivals. The one you are talking about from Brothers, it can take the credit cards and the CDs, but I won't shred them. But I use both of them side by side to shred everything and mix it with my food source to put it into the compost pile to reduce the smell or anything. So that's one way we can educate people. Hey, if it's a really important private document, if you're not comfortable, You can come to the shredding event, but we want to minimize the impact locally at your home. So one thing you can do is you can wrap your food material, or you can use these papers as a carbon source to cover the food in the green bins. In the middle of the summer, everybody is going to complain that their green bins are stinking because food is cooking in there. One way to reduce that odor is to just cover it with paper.
Sure.
That will reduce the amount of shredding we are getting. And at the same time, if we have, if we can we have a community garden. I don't know whether there is a composting area over there or not.
Sure.
Sort of. So we can compost the shredded material as well. So that's, I mean, I can talk about compost all year. So pardon that. I'm like, what can I compost? You know, if I pick up the thing, can I compost this? Oh, no, I'm not buying that.
Sure. No, so there's two ways I want to respond to that. One is, I think, definitely in our kind of communication material around minimizing the smell in the bins. I think that's a good idea to talk about, like the non-glossy paper. Something that I know we have talked about at different times, but makes a big difference in my compost bin. Second is we have differing opinions from our residents on what needs to be shredded. Some people are kind of just bringing the most, what they consider to be like highly sensitive, like, your bank contract or whatever. And then other people are bringing a lot more stuff, because they don't feel comfortable recycling things with like their address on it or their name or something like that. So it may be, I would love to at some point do some communication around like what needs to be shredded. And what is best suited for the shredding event, which could potentially reduce like the amount of, because I think the amount I'm personally a little less worried about, though I hear you on like, let's divert as much as possible, but I agree that the kind of idling cars are not.
I'm looking, I'm listening to my stomach.
Yeah.
I'm thinking, you need to know if we agree that you go out and get a contract
Yes.
for the year.
And does anyone have one or two things that they really want me to do also?
And I mean,
Like alongside, not like kind of in tandem with. the
we can make
contract.
some other of those decisions down the road, like how do we,
Yes, absolutely.
how do we use the shredding events to increase environmental consciousness? et cetera? Okay. So we can separate this into, do we agree with you getting a contract? I think we all agree with you getting a contract,
Yes.
Great.
and let's put the rest of that off.
Okay, fine. That's fine. Is everyone else cool with that?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
great. Sounds good. That was my last slide, so that's good news for everyone. Okay, great. Thank you. I
Okay.
appreciate that.
Actually, this is for the chair, or I'll do it, one or the other.
Fair enough.
It's really actually a simple question. We have subcommittees and we appoint commissioners to those. We don't have very many commissioners here at the moment. But if you look at the previous agendas, it lists all those subcommittees that are listed there. I suggested to LP, there we go, I started to lose her name, to just put them in here, that we're gonna restart the whole thing. That I think this is obviously it's a suggestion, we restart the whole thing. We'll probably will need to keep Scour, because Scour subcommittee on waste reduction, because that's a big issue, mainly because of 1383. And some other things. And then we will reconfigure once we have more commissioners. Am I making any sense?
Yep.
Except for the
Lauren, go ahead.
I'd like to add something though.
Okay.
Traditionally, we've had two major subcommittees. A lot of these listed here were minor. They didn't deal with big issues or as many issues, but Scour, waste reduction, had a lot of issues that were solved, and I think there are a lot of issues going forward, so that should stand. The solar and green building was also a substantial subcommittee. There were two ordinances, I think, that remain to go before council that probably will be taken care of in the next few months, but there may not be an urgent need to have that as a major standing committee. What I propose is that we do add another major standing subcommittee, and that's climate action and transportation. Since we have Christian, and that's something that I had worked on, and I would like to be on that subcommittee. So I would like to go so far as to suggest that we agree that we should establish that subcommittee, set up a meeting in September, and invite anybody who's interested, and that would be part of the orientation and part of getting things moving on that subject, but I would like to see us commit to that subcommittee, just going back to the climate action plan.
You called it climate action and
Climate action road, going back to the climate action and transportation.
entrance.
Transportation is an integral part of
Right.
climate action because, looking at the goals for 2030, greenhouse gas emissions have to be reduced by 30% from 1990 levels, and 50% of the contribution is from transportation. And we had that in the climate action roadmap in 2021. There's some things going on. Unfortunately, we have Christian here now, finally on staff, doing something with it, but I don't think we can wait. I think it's something that we really need to address with some urgency, and hopefully the commissioners, others will buy into it and will want to participate on that subcommittee. So that's my suggestion. And some of the other things that are here, wellness, the smoking ordinance that was referred to earlier. At the time that I left the commission, that was ready to go. And I think it's before the council. It may not need more work, just a matter of scheduling it. Probably the
Smoking.
F, wellness.
wellness, the smoking ordinance was the major thing there. I think it would be good for all the commissioners to know what's in it. And also the building ones, but that's my suggestion. Basically move forward with two major subcommittees that really have some urgency. And I'm just making that as a suggestion.
Yeah,
And if people agree, perhaps we can schedule a meeting in September, and I would like to participate.
I see no problem with that as being major subcommittees. It divides up a lot of what we do. And there are some other things that once in a while we need an ad hoc subcommittee to be working on.
For sure. And we do recognize the difference between standing and ad hoc subcommittees.
So two standing subcommittees.
There's standing subcommittees going forward.
Scour and climate action and transportation.
So I get no opinion in this. This is you guys get to decide. I think, you all get to decide this. I have no official opinion here. The one question I would ask is, as we're thinking about bucketing climate action and transportation, I think it would be a question for the subcommittee to think about, like, what are, the 1-year goals of that subcommittee? Because when I think about the climate action plan, I agree that transportation is a major focus in it, and we saw in kind of our work plan, building that out is going to be a big focus. I also see that climate action plan containing things around like building emissions, for example, other things. So I would want to make sure that we think about what are the key goals and why do we want to bring those together, or do we want to start with climate action and then pivot into transportation? I don't know. This is for the subcommittee to decide, but that would be sort of my question.
And I think that's valid. I think there are a lot of things involved in transportation, and part of it would perhaps encompass what the bike routes and cycling subcommittee was working on, because that's a major part of looking at our whole set of transportation modes. It may not need to be, the two terms may not need to be in the title, but it really needs to be recognized that transportation is a major part of climate action, and I think it could be left to the subcommittee to determine what the focus should be.
Sure. The subcommittee for Christian. Based on Christian's portfolio.
And we have to be, as commissioners, we have to be respectful of staff people's time and so forth, and work collaboratively with staff.
So is there a motion that we go forth with two subcommittees, Scour and what? No. There we go. Climate action and transportation.
I mean, what happens with the rest of the subcommittees then? Are they getting rolled into the other ones? Or?
They're no longer existent subcommittees because we don't have the people doing them. So these are all things that will come up.
Oh, okay, so they can be split out again later.
Yeah,
Okay, yeah, that's fine. As long as we're
We're
not like,
making a distinction also between standing committees
okay, that's fine. As
and
long
then
as,
ad hoc.
yeah, that's fine. As long as we're not nuking a load of things that we need.
Right.
And clearly through the orientation, I think people will understand what the committees have done, and will also speak about their interests and hopefully get involved. And like water conservation, basically we had a liaison who attended the DWA board meetings once a month and reported back to us. There wasn't a lot of action there. There could be, but that's the way it was historically. So I think as we, look at the history, we'll understand what's been done and what we may need to continue to do.
Sounds good. Well, I'm happy to make a motion for that one.
Okay, do we have a second?
Second,
Okay, I'll just do a voice vote here, all in favor?
Yes.
Yes.
Any
Aye.
opposed?
No.
No,
Okay, so we're good. Great, so we'll move forward with those two standing bids. Okay, we now moved to the final section, which I believe is commissioner comments.
You,
Let's get.
you forgot.
Oh, sorry, I
Scour.
did something.
Yeah, you forgot Scour, which I wasn't gonna say.
Go ahead.
I'm the commissioner, I am the only commissioner on Scour at the moment. But Scour is important and it's it's been covered in various parts of here, a lot of what we're doing with 1383. It also includes issues of foodware and similar related issues. And I think batteries fall under Scour also, yes. And so we will be meeting, we'll continue to meet. We would like other commissioners who volunteer to step forth and see. We'll post a agenda for it. I forget what day of the month it meets,
First
but
Thursday.
it's Thursday, it's the first Thursday, it's first Thursday. And as a report, actually, most of what LP was doing came out of Scour. That because Scour also had something to do with shredding. And also the battery, and those are all well known. The mainly other thing is we talk a lot with Palm Springs Disposal, and we are beginning to talk a little bit about enforcement rather than encouragement of separation of material of composting. So
and one thing to go along with that, Scour has gone a long way in terms of setting up different colored and shaped containers for
right.
trash versus recycling, but there's a lot more work that needs to be done in terms of educating people and make sure that the right things go in the right container.
And I will note, just as a procedural Brown Act matter, that subcommittees cannot have a quorum of members.
That's
So it has to be less than, so at 11, our quorum would be 6. So it has to be 5 or fewer members on the subcommittee. So if we have a particularly popular subcommittee, we might have to take turns.
You're getting good at this. Good. Okay, that's the end of mine. So commissioner comments is at the end.
Traditionally, we've done this kind of as a round robin. I think we've done this as like we've gone commissioner by commissioner, like as a round robin. So
Right.
who wants to go first?
Start this, if you like. My only comment, it's been great meeting you all. Thanks very much. We look forward to carrying on doing this. It's great.
Do you have anything for the upcoming agenda?
No.
No. Mr. Clark.
Thank you for the opportunity to let me speak. I guess being a commission member, I'm not being a chair, I can be an obnoxious commission member.
And we'll welcome that.
Thank you for doing this. This is my first time I'm doing anything in the city office or anything of this level. So I'm happy to be here and I'm looking forward to learn great things from all of you.
And I'll say the same thing. It's been a pleasure getting to know you. I hope that we work it all out in a good manner. I think it's going to be interesting.
and I am very humble. I have a lot to learn.
We all do. Everyone, sustainability, there's no like one way to know everything. So the goal is to empower everyone with expertise and get a common language that we can understand each other. Great, okay, so no one has any major, I mean, we do have, so we'll have the deferred battery recycling item on the next agenda.
Right.
We'll probably talk a little bit about climate action planning, get a little bit more into detail, and we'll also have 6 new commissioners to introduce at our next meeting. So we have a pretty full agenda. I'm sure more things will come up. If anyone has any thoughts or requests over the next couple of weeks, feel free to email this to me. Actually, they should go to you. They should go to the chair. They shouldn't come to me.
My email address looks suspiciously like LPs.
But actually,
We share will you share the emails of the group with us?
But it is true. You say this, I think, we can't communicate.
That's right.
We can't, as a group,
You can
communicate.
communicate one-on-one by the, according to the Brown Act,
We
it's
can
when more than two people have a conversation outside of a meeting room, then it becomes a public discussion.
Roy may not, or
The orientation last week clarified one thing that I had as a question. And that is that even if there is information that needs to go out to all the commissioners about, the upcoming meeting or do this to prepare, it can't come from the chair. It has to come from
Yeah.
staff.
Yeah.
And also, Carol,
And in the past, when I was involved, the staff was always good in saying, on behalf of Chair Clark, please do this for the next meeting. So we really have to follow that
Yeah,
protocol.
the one bit I do remember from the one bit, more than one, was that if they do send out an email to everybody, you can't hit reply all because then that creates a conversation between all of us.
Right.
So you'd have to reply individually. to
I try to be good about putting everybody on BCC, so you can't reply all. So if you ever see me sending an email to myself and you get it, that's what's happening. So I'm trying not to create a meeting by accident. I've been known to slip and forget to do that, but so thank you for the reminders. We'll get that reply out.
No one needs extra paperwork.
okay. We're adjourned at 7:41.
Good times.
Great, thanks, everyone. I'm gonna stop the recording of the meeting now.
I should look and see what the date of the meeting is.
Oh, yeah, so
It's on here.
Yeah.
Thank you.